Welcome. Welcome to incorporating Azure Stack into your hybrid cloud environment. I'm Natalia Mackevicius, and I'm the Partner Director for Azure Stack. Got a lot of content for you today. So first, just a logistics reminder. Turn down your cell phones. I know it's like the movie theaters, but if you can turn down your cell phones, I would appreciate it. We have a lot of content for you today. First and foremost, I'm really excited to talk about some of the announcements that we've made from Azure Stack. As many of you may know, we introduced the concept of Azure Stack several years back, and we are now actually shipping our first systems of Azure Stack. So it's a big milestone for us. We've partnered with HPE, Dell, and Lenovo, and they are shipping their first systems to customers. So round of applause on that. It's a huge accomplishment. We also have expanded our purchasing options. So a while back, we announced that we will have Cisco integrated systems available, as well as Huawei systems available. We have a new partner, which is Intel's Wurtman, so a Wurtman solution called Terra Systems for Azure Stack that will be available as well. And then we also are introducing, Avanade has a fully managed solution with a single point of purchase for an Azure Stack solution. Finally, we have a new Azure Stack operator training and certification that we're introducing. So for many of you in this audience, you've been looking at what does Azure Stack mean to you? We have an operator certification that will be available in calendar year of 2018, but we also have some coursework that you can start learning about it today. So very excited about the operator certification and training. So big announcements this week. So first I'm going to start with Microsoft Azure, and where does Azure Stack fit in? Azure, as you may have seen in the keynote sessions with Scott Guthrie, as well as a session with Jason Zanter, is really a productive, intelligent, and trusted cloud platform. The area that Azure Stack really fits in is hybrid, and providing hybrid capabilities for your environments. Azure is the only consistent hybrid cloud, and there's a few areas that Microsoft provides hybrid cloud capabilities. First and foremost, you've got Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. So you have a common identity plane that provides you hybrid capabilities. You also have integrated management and security, so you can integrate your on-premises infrastructure with your cloud assets. So we have things like OMS that is available. Then there's the consistent data platform. So everything from things like SQL, Stretch Database, which allow you to have access to on-premises data, as well as data in the cloud with Azure Data Services. And then finally, unified DevOps. And this is where Azure Stack really fits in, is from unified development and DevOps practices, because it gives you a consistent platform, hybrid platform, where you can develop, deploy, use the same people skills, processes to develop applications, whether they are globally in Azure or they're on premises with Azure Stack. Azure Stack really is an extension of Azure. So it's the only consistent hybrid cloud platform. We use the same consistent cloud paradigm that we have in Azure Stack. So it's the same control plane, the Azure Resource Manager. If you've used Azure, we have the same Azure Resource Manager in Azure Stack. The same portal experience. The difference is in the infrastructure, so you can run it on premises. So we're not running at hyperscale like you have in Azure, but we are running on a smaller footprint with Azure Stack. But this enables you to have the consistency of IT operations, as well as development practices. So really key to having that consistent hybrid platform. This also allows you to have Azure services everywhere. So everything from not just IaaS capabilities, but PaaS services. So Azure announced that they have 42 regions available. That's more than any public cloud provider. With Azure Stack, we're extending that. So you have hundreds of service providers, as well as thousands of enterprises have the capability to use the same services, same types of services in Azure as well as Azure Stack. It goes beyond just the Microsoft services, though. It goes into the ecosystem as well, and having ecosystem capabilities to use the same software in Azure as you do in Azure Stack. So really giving you that breadth of Azure services everywhere. So now I'm going to go through a little bit more on Azure Stack with a video.
Azure Stack is an extension of Azure, bringing the agility and fast-paced innovation of cloud computing to on-premises environments, and enabling a truly consistent hybrid cloud with global regions, service provider offerings, and enterprise customers using Azure and Azure Stack. Our vision is to deliver Azure services virtually everywhere. Azure and Azure Stack enables customers to unlock completely new scenarios and business opportunities. We bring together the best of edge and cloud. From factory floors, cruise ships, to oil fields, customers can address latency and connectivity while enabling efficient decision-making.
I think it'll have a dramatic impact. The real pace and speed of innovation in Microsoft Public Cloud and being able to bring that down into Azure Stack.
Customers in regulated industries can develop in Azure with flexibility to deploy and manage global applications seamlessly to meet regulation and policies, all without having to change code.
Azure Stack is a perfect solution to bring the benefits of the cloud while having the control of the data in the country.
Because data has gravity, we're bringing cloud to legacy systems so customers can modernize core business application using modern architectures such as containers, microservices, and serverless.
Developers have a great opportunity in front of them to be able to innovate with application development.
It saves a lot of time, saves a lot of cost. It's not like you're working with a completely different platform in your data center. It's totally a game changer for IT.
Unlock new possibilities today with Azure and Azure Stack.
We see Azure Stack as the one and only true hybrid cloud available in the market.
So in the video, we talked about some of the hybrid use cases for Azure, and this has been really important for us. We've been listening to all our customers and looking at what makes sense for hybrid application use cases. And we really identified three main patterns for hybrid application development use cases. These may not be the only ones, but these are the main ones that we're seeing and talking to some of our customers. So the first is edge and disconnected solutions. And as you can imagine, across the globe, there are many industries, there are many corporations who have locations at the edge where they need to have some real-time processing done. This could be in industries such as oil and gas. It could be in industries such as shipping companies, government agencies, but many different industries and verticals where they need edge processing done at the location. But they can make use of Azure at hyperscale for processing for data analytics potentially, but really making use of Azure at hyperscale. There's also a subset of that where you need fully disconnected scenarios. So some of you may have locations in the globe where there's little to no network connectivity. That could be in remote locations in the United States. It could also be in locations that are in, for instance, in parts of Africa, for instance. But there's many locations that have little to no network connectivity, or it could be based on the requirements of your industry. So if you're in military and defense, you could imagine having a requirement to go on a mission where you have no network connectivity. So you need to be completely air-gapped from the network. Azure Stack can address these scenarios for the edge and disconnected using the same cloud paradigm as you have in Azure. So again, you can do live processing using Azure Stack at the edge or where you're fully disconnected. Another pattern that we are seeing is cloud applications that meet varied regulations. Now, Azure supports the most regulations and certifications of any public cloud. But we recognize the regulations are constantly changing. There's also some corporate regulations that may prohibit you from actually bringing data to the public cloud. So we want to address that and give you that flexibility and choice to use that same cloud platform and have it available in locations where you need to keep the data resident, or you have data sovereignty requirements, or specific corporate regulations. Again, it's still using the same cloud paradigm as you have in Azure, but having that available in those locations. The last pattern that we're seeing is cloud application model on premises. So we've been going through a transformation in the industry where people are really starting to use microservices. They're starting to use container services. They're really starting to look at how they can modernize their applications to meet business innovation. Everyone wants to be more agile so they can meet the business needs. In some cases, we've got systems that are legacy or heritage systems that can't easily be modernized. Example of this, in talking to one of a financial services organization, and they have a mainframe. Yes, I know mainframes are still here. Many of us thought they were not going to be here today, but they are still here. So are many of our ERP solutions and others. And they are mission-critical applications for many of you. It's not easy to just port those applications and move them to a public cloud. So what we're giving you the capability to do is take the cloud and bring it to your mainframe, bring it to your heritage or legacy application, and start modernizing it. So you can modernize the front end with things like microservices. You can start using container services, but still have that connection to that system because it's mission critical to your business. So these are the main use cases that we are seeing for Azure Stack. Again, it's not all inclusive, but these are some of the use cases that we are seeing. And because we have the same hybrid cloud platform as Azure and that consistency with Azure, we can enable these use cases. So I'm going to drill down a little bit into the use cases. Maybe. And talk about first, we have been talking to many customers over the last year and really working with many customers. So here's some examples of real customers that have identified with these use cases and scenarios to use Azure Stack. And I'll drill down a little bit deeper into each of them, but in the edge and disconnected scenarios, we've got a company, Schlumberger, in oil and gas. We've got Avid, which is a media company. So again, you could imagine from an oil and gas, you definitely have some locations that are remote, and there's a need to do local processing. From a media company needs to do live streaming. Then we've got cloud applications that meet varied regulations. And this is where we have some financial services organizations, such as ABSA and Saxo Bank. And then cloud application model on premises. We have ANZ Bank as well as MKI, which is a conglomerate. So again, these are real customers, and we have others that we've talked to. These are a sampling of some of the real customers and the use cases for Azure Stack. Azure Stack, as some of you may know, we went through several technical previews. We had a first technical preview, second, third, and now we're shipping systems. So many of these customers have been on this journey with us and have been testing with us. So drill down more in the edge and disconnected solutions. So in the edge and disconnected solutions, again, part of it is about real-time processing that has to happen at that edge. And it can be for retail locations, again, specific industries, but many companies, global companies, are still finding that they need some edge processing done because they need real-time processing, or there's latency in the network that would prohibit them from going. Could also be connectivity issues. They don't have steady-state network connectivity, and then local data processing. This is where you can, in an edge scenario, you have the live processing done on an Azure Stack system at the location. But you can also send data to do aggregation in Azure. So yesterday morning, in Scott Guthrie's keynote, we demonstrated a use case where we had a shipping company where you've got an Azure Stack on each ship, and then you have your fleet-wide application in Azure doing global processing. So that's a real use case we've worked with a customer on, where you've got an edge scenario, as you can imagine, very disconnected because of the latency in the network and the bandwidth costs using SatLink. The key is, though, having the common application logic across both. We can also address this for disconnected scenarios. So we have two models within Azure Stack. One is using Azure Active Directory, but you can also have a fully disconnected environment with ADFS, Active Directory Federated Services. But again, very powerful use case and scenario where that hybrid application platform really allows you to have differentiated value. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of the companies. So Avid. Avid is a media company, and they have journalists and reporters. They go off and they're recording news stories, but they want to take that, all of the film that they're creating, they take it and they bring it up to Azure. In Azure, they look at the facial recognition. They look at the language. They look at, and they do some tagging. So they really take the Azure Media Services and cognitive analytics to really look at that data and provide the more information on each video. But then they take those videos and render them. They don't want any jitter when they're actually playing the media. They don't want any, they want to make sure that there's no latency when they're actually streaming. So they take those images then, the videos, and bring them down to Azure Stack. And with Azure Stack, because again, it's the same consistent platform, then they use Azure Stack to locally play the videos and show the media. So it's really about optimum speed and performance with Avid. And they can use that same logic in Azure and Azure Stack and have the same application patterns between Azure and Azure Stack. The next one is Schlumberger. Schlumberger, again, oil and gas. As you can imagine, they're in oil and gas. They're in some pretty remote locations. Remote locations based on geography, where they want to do drilling. There's drilling applications that they have, and they want to make use of a hybrid cloud platform. Just a few weeks ago, Schlumberger had a press release where they're providing a drilling solution with a drill plan on Azure Stack and giving you that hybrid cloud benefit where you can do more of the aggregate analytics for drilling in Azure in the global application, but use the same application patterns on Azure Stack locally. So again, very interesting use case that Schlumberger is using for Azure and Azure Stack that's enabled because of that consistent hybrid cloud platform. So with that, I'm going to start with some demos. We've got demos of each of these use cases. So I want to introduce Shri and Thomas, and they're going to be doing a demo of Contoso Construction Company. Now, this is based on a real customer. Clearly, that customer is not Contoso. But the construction company is a global construction company that has locations pretty much everywhere. But they're opening up a site in Alaska. And Alaska doesn't have the best network connectivity. So from that network connectivity, if they want to actually access their global application in Azure, they're not able to. So what can they do? They don't want to have to rewrite their application, use different services. So they're going to use the power of Azure and Azure Stack to then deploy on an Azure Stack environment in Alaska. So Shri and Thomas are going to be with me for a couple demos with these use cases, and Shri is going to represent the developer. So any developers in the audience? A few. You can relate to Shri. And then Thomas is going to represent the operator. So somebody with Azure Stack, you still have to maintain and operate your Azure Stack environment. You can use an SI or service provider to do so, or you can manage and operate it yourself. So Thomas is going to represent the operator. So any operators here, you can relate to Thomas. Okay? So let's go with Contoso. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Natalia. So let's get right into it. Contoso has a number of applications that it's hosted in Azure for everybody in each of their sites to actually use. I'm going to show you one of those applications that they've hosted in Azure. This is an application that is used by the site manager to manage his own construction site. Let's go take a look at what the application does. This is an application that gives him information about the incidents that happen on the site, the different crews that are on the site, as well as overtimes and all the hours that are logged on a construction site. That is the core functionality of this application. In addition to the core functionality, this application is also hooked up with other connected applications of Contoso construction that gives it additional peripheral functionality. For example, here they get global alerts. These are alerts that are being generated by feeds that are run by Contoso that is available to each of their construction sites. Now, because this application is built in Azure, when a challenge comes to me that this application needs to be deployed in a remote location in Alaska where there is literally no internet connection, it's easy for me because of the consistency that Azure and Azure Stack has. All I have to do is go to my build system, generate a build, throw it onto a disk or a flash drive, and ship it to the location in Alaska. At the location, somebody can actually take that thumb drive or disk and be able to deploy that application exactly as it is to an Azure Stack instance that is completely disconnected from the internet through Azure tools like PowerShell or CLI, and be able to run that application on Azure Stack. I've already deployed that application on Azure Stack, and this is what it looks like. It's got a web app, it's got functions, and some storage associated with it. Now, that exact same application, when it's running on Azure Stack, does not have internet connectivity. But what you can see here is the core functionality of my application. The data that is available to me at that construction site is still operational, but the peripheral functionality that is being provided by additional services when it is connected to the internet is not. And me as a developer, I can write applications that gracefully fail over when there is connectivity and when the connectivity is not there, and still build those applications in the exact same way for my public deployment at Azure, as well as for a disconnected deployment in Azure Stack. How is that for app development patterns? So the second part of this demo is, since the environment is in Alaska and is completely disconnected from the internet, this Azure Stack environment is going to be configured in a disconnected ADFS topology, which means the Active Directory Federation Services and Active Directory is basically providing identities for users to log in and use these applications at that site. When users come in, I need to be able to add them to that Active Directory at the site. And that is where Thomas comes into play. Thomas, can you show us how to add users in the ADFS disconnected environment at the site?
Great, thank you. So Contoso Construction just hired a new developer that we're going to onboard into the system and grant permission to operate with the application resources. So as Sri mentioned, as we're running in a disconnected scenario, we're managing our identities in Active Directory. So we're using a well-known familiar console to create our users. Now guess who we have just been able to hire for our organization? It's Bob the Builder.
That's a good hire.
Great hire, Thomas.
Now, once we have created that user, given that we have ADFS on our Contoso directory and have it federated with our Azure Stack deployment, the user will immediately be able to authenticate on the Azure portal. But in order to make sure that he can operate our application, we need to delegate the permission. So what you see here is I'm logged into the user experience with my current user, and I'm bringing up the subscription management and using the access control management functionality to delegate the permission. So once I type in Bob's name, we're immediately doing an LDAP query into the Active Directory on-premise to find the user and be able to delegate the permission. Now, in order to validate that we have successfully onboarded Bob, we're going to sign in as Bob. As you can immediately see, we see the on-premise ADFS logon page.
Maybe.
Timeout.
Try again. Yay, there it goes.
Live demos, yay.
So I've shown you using existing skill sets to manage user identities on-premise, but I've also shown you new skills that are the same in Azure as in Azure Stack to delegate permissions.
So thanks, Sri and Thomas. Great demo. So a couple of things I wanted to highlight from that demo. Again, that showed your edge and disconnected scenario where you have a completely disconnected environment. But Sri really showed you the power of Azure and Azure Stack. The portal between Azure and Azure Stack, exactly the same. The resources that you had for the application that he developed for Azure and Azure Stack, the same. So from a development perspective, it was easy to create the application and just choose where to deploy it. So if you have a fully disconnected scenario, you have that choice to deploy it there, or you can use Global Azure. From an operator perspective, many of you, so in the audience, are you using ADFS? Anybody using ADFS in the audience? So maybe a few of you, great. You can leverage those same skills that you have. So it should be very familiar to you on how you're operating and managing in a disconnected environment using ADFS. If you're also familiar with AAD, again, if you have a connected environment, it's the same skill set. So from an operator experience as well as a developer experience, you're really innovating and having capabilities with Azure and Azure Stack. Okay, so now let's go to the cloud applications that meet varied regulations. So in this one, we're really talking about scenarios where you've got customers that have regulatory requirements or data sovereignty requirements. Show of hands in the room, how many of you actually want to use public clouds and are not able to because of either regulations or data sovereignty requirements? So quite a few of you, and I've heard this on and on because customers really want to make use of all of the innovation from microservices perspective, developer practices that are available in a public cloud, but some just can't. And Microsoft is committed to providing you choice and providing you hybrid capabilities so you can still use those same types of practices. So it gives you the capability to deploy to handle your customer preferences. It could be government regulations, and some of those change over time. It could be industry regulations, or it could be data sovereignty because of specific regions. So you can still develop and have no changes to the application. And that's, again, really critical for you, especially multinational companies, where you might have a global application and then want to deploy just in one region because of regulations or data sovereignty. So here we have a couple of different examples. So the first one is ABSA Bank. So ABSA is looking to deploy their risk management solution. So it's a quantitative risk management solution to Azure to comply with regulation changes in region. So they're using Azure and Azure Stack to have flexibility to deploy their application to locations where they have compliance requirements. So again, very powerful use case to have a global application and then specific regions where you can deploy using Azure Stack to meet the regulatory requirements. They can repurpose that application code and use it in those locations. Now, the second one is Saxo Bank. And here they're using a trading application. And again, it's a global trading application, but they've got data sovereignty requirements in specific locations. So with Saxo Bank, again, they are looking at using hybrid cloud with Azure and Azure Stack to create a global application and then deploy based on sovereignty requirements. Okay. So with that, we're going to bring back our developer and operator one more time, and we're going to talk about, not one more time, there will be one more after that, to talk about cloud applications that meet varied regulations. Now, in this scenario, we have an insurance company. I'm hoping all of you have health insurance, and in the United States in particular, we have an open enrollment season. So anybody here can hopefully relate to that, where there is a peak of activity when you have an open enrollment season for a healthcare provider. So the insurance company has to manage their peak workload, but because of their corporate regulations, they need to keep the data resident. So it's really important for them to keep the data resident in-house because of their corporate regulations. Azure can manage HIPAA compliance, but in this case, we've got a healthcare insurance company that really needs to keep the data resident. Now, I want to also shout out and say thank you to Rackspace, who's actually hosting this demo for us, and they've been working with us for quite a long time on some of our OneNode systems and demonstrations, so thank you for that. So we're going to go through this example of a Northwind insurance company, again, based on a real customer and customer requirements that has a requirement to keep data resident, but has peak times of traffic where they need to manage the peak traffic. So we'll start with the developer. Oops. Whoop. Go ahead, Sri.
All right, perfect. I love doing this demo. So this is Northwind Insurance's application. This is basically where users and organizations go to enroll themselves for health insurance during open enrollment. Now, during that open enrollment, the traffic on the site actually peaks. So we're trying to use a strategy where we want to cater to that peak time traffic by scaling the application to Azure during those times and spinning them down when the traffic comes back to normal. And because of my organizational regulations, the data cannot go to Azure, so the data will still remain on premises. So to help me do that, I'm actually using Visual Studio Team Services, which is our code repository, as well as our continuous integration and continuous deployment application. This will help me build the application once, and once it's built successfully, it will let me deploy the application to an Azure instance, as well as orchestrate it to deploy that exact same application to my on-premises Azure Stack instance. In addition to this, we've hooked this application up with Azure App Insights, Application Insights, as well as Traffic Manager technologies. These technologies help me manage my application as well as monitor them so that when the traffic hits that peak time, that peak load, they will automatically swap the traffic out or be able to load balance the traffic to an Azure instance or to an Azure Stack instance. And that's basically what I'm going to show you today. Let's quickly go back to the application. For your benefit, we've added a banner on the top that says pages loaded from Azure Stack. And when this goes to Azure, evidently, this will say something different, right? So let's actually go ahead and simulate some load. And if you have active internet connectivity, you can hit this website as well, northwindinsurance.azurestack.global. But just because we may not generate enough load, I'm going to go ahead and spin up some load on this machine. Let me get into my load machine and execute my load script. Now let me do that. And I'm going to go back, and I'm going to look at the live stream inside App Insights. This is an application that will show me what my traffic is at any given point in time. So as you can see, the traffic just spiked. If I look at the servers that I have, you can see that traffic is going to the Azure Stack server. And once it hits a certain threshold, you notice that it now is going to my Azure instance. So App Insights was monitoring my application for a certain amount of requests for a certain threshold, and once that threshold was hit, it automatically enabled the Azure instance of that same application and swapped the traffic to go to Azure. So now, when I actually go and visit that application, let me go to it in a private browsing window on a different browser, and go to Northwind Insurance.
So we recognize not all of you use Edge, so Sri will also demonstrate that we're not always using Edge.
So when I hit that website again, you will notice that the banner color changed to green, and the website is now actually being loaded from Azure. right? Now, let me go ahead and get health insurance. I have not gotten my health insurance up until now.
That's a problem.
That may be a problem. So I'm going to use the default data because I've already filled in that data on this application, and it's going to show me a list of plans that I can choose. I obviously want to go for the gold plan. So I'm going to go for the gold plan, and I'm going to enter Shri. I'm going to leave the rest of the options the same way.
Don't give them your social security
Yes,
number.
it is 000
Yeah.
for now, for anybody cares. And I'm going to buy the health insurance. Now, the reason I bought the health insurance is to show you that that data, that purchase data, basically, even though the application was served from Azure, is writing it to my on-premises instance. As you can see, the data, the plan that I just got, went back to the SQL server that is running on-premises inside my Azure Stack instance. So the application can be in Azure Stack or Azure and be load balanced depending on a certain threshold, and the data will still reside on premises in my Azure Stack. Yeah?
Pretty powerful.
Okay, so in instances like these, Azure has a number of images, virtual machine images that conform to a lot of different regulations. But in my case, since it's inside the organization, my organization has certain regulations which demand only certain images from being used. So that's where I basically go to Thomas, and I can work with Thomas to see how I can have my organization approved images to be available to me on my Azure Stack instance. Thomas.
So Azure Stack allows you to syndicate marketplace items directly from Azure, but it also allows you to bring your custom images that fit your regulation needs. As an Azure Stack operator, it is my responsibility to control those images that we have in the catalog. So what you see here is the Azure Stack operator experience. What you see here, you can, at a glimpse, you can see alerts, resource providers, updates, what Natalia demoed yesterday, but you can also see the region management, which allows you to drill deeper into the infrastructure. So I'm going to start by showing you the marketplace management. The marketplace management shows you that I've already syndicated some images directly down from Azure. When we look at what's available in the list, it's a continuously growing list of images that you can directly take from Azure and make it available in Azure Stack to your users. Now, in order to fit regulation requirements, I also have the ability to upload my custom images. For that purpose, I'm going to use the compute resource provider, which allows me to bring my own images. What I have done earlier is I've taken a virtual hard disk image and I've uploaded it into a blob storage container. And that blob storage container can either be in Azure or in Azure Stack. So all I have to do in order to bring this image into my catalog is to reference to this virtual image file and the blob container where it's located. I then fill in some details for the publisher. And we also do versioning of the images. And with just a couple of clicks, you've seen I've brought in a new image for my users to deploy. Thank you.
So that was a fun demo. Again, I think that some of the key things that you saw in that demo from a development perspective, Shri was able to develop an application that can make use of the compute resources in Azure Stack or during peak load times in Azure, but while maintaining the data resident to Azure Stack. So that really it shows that you can keep your data sovereign while making use of both Azure and Azure Stack because of the consistency of the platform. So Thomas introduced the Azure Stack operator experience, and that's an investment, a huge investment that we've made with Azure Stack, is ensuring that you have an operator experience where you have simplicity to manage and operate an Azure Stack environment. So everything from orchestrated patch and update technologies to managing some of the resources. So thank you, guys. So let's go on to the last scenario that we have, which is the cloud application model on premises. So this is where, again, I talked about you've got some systems where you may have legacy or heritage systems in your environment. Mission critical to your business, really important. And you still want to start using some of the modern application technologies, everything from PaaS services to microservices, container technologies, things that are going to speed innovation. Azure Stack gives you the capability to bring that to your environments. And so you can move to Azure without code changes. You can start modernizing and have that consistent programming model. And so we're seeing a lot of this with customers in industries like financial services, like insurance companies, healthcare. It runs the gamut, but it gives you that capability to start monitoring and having that speed of innovation, modernizing. So the first customer that we have as an example, and again, these are real customers who have been using Azure Stack, is MKI. So they are a conglomerate for everything from metals, machinery, and infrastructure, chemicals, energy. They're a conglomerate. They're a global company, 65 regions, and they have mission-critical applications. So they are bringing and modernizing the applications, don't want to introduce latency, so they're bringing Azure Stack on premises. So they're going to accelerate their innovation with Azure Stack and then start moving applications to Azure. The next one is ANZ. So ANZ is looking at Azure Stack and Azure for their digital bank. They're looking to modernize with DevOps practices. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on ANZ because I have a guest here. So Pankaj Patel is going to come up and join me, and we've got a couple of questions that, a couple of questions that we'll have a Q&A with him. So come on up, Pankaj. Let's introduce, hand applause for Pankaj. Thank you.
Hi.
I'm going to give you a mic, and we can sit. Let me turn this on. That was a good question. You test it. I don't know. Does it work? It's working. Oh, good. Phew. Here, let's have a seat. I wasn't sure. So I'm really delighted to have Pankaj here with me on stage. Long flight for him. Welcome. And I was wondering if you could provide us an overview of how ANZ Bank is in your business strategy.
Sure. So ANZ Bank, I would say ANZ if that's okay.
Of course, yes. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it.
So we are one of the large 5 listed company in Australia with operating over 34 markets globally, and we serve about 10 million customers. We have recently seen a shift in expectation of customers and communities, and that means that we have to rethink our relationship with them. And we are embracing digital transformation and app modernization, and it's not just what we can do, it's all about how we can work with a trusted partner such as Microsoft to deliver the transformation.
Great, it's great to hear about the digital transformation that you're going through. Now, you're looking at a hybrid cloud strategy, and you have a hybrid cloud vision. Can you talk about your business and technical drivers that led you to evaluate Azure Stack?
Yep. So we are focusing on improving productivity for our developer community, and at the same time productivity for employees. That means that the hybrid cloud becomes a single point of convergence for the entire organization. The Azure Stack is unique in a sense that provides the Azure cloud capability on-premise, and it means it is going to be our interoperability and mobility for our organization using developer and our business.
Wonderful. So really about DevOps. So can you talk about the use cases that your organization will use for Azure and Azure Stack?
We have, as the operating in 34 markets, bring its own challenges, and the The developers that we have across in offshore development centers in India, the Philippines, and China, they would like to use the different version of code in an environment. So having those applications, single instance of application in multiple geography, multiple locations, we want them to develop and test into the Azure Stack and then deploy that on-prem, so without losing any data or any customer information. So that's what we are looking at.
That's a great use case. So you're looking at Azure to do a lot of your dev test capabilities.
That's correct.
And then bringing it down to Azure Stack, where you need to have the data resident.
That's right.
Wonderful. So now you've been along this journey with us for a while, right? You want to tell me about your experience with Azure Stack thus far?
Yeah, our teams are testing from TP1, TP2, and TP3, and it goes, we're working with your group very closely. I think one thing that we are very much excited about is that using the same portal, using the same experience for our operators as well as for developer, and just use a Visual Studio to do that. That's we are excited about, really.
That's wonderful. It sounds like, one, thank you for being with us on this journey since TP1. And then it sounds like the same developer practices, so you're having DevOps in your environment across Azure and Azure Stack is really helping you.
Right.
Okay. So what are your production deployment plans?
We have ordered hardware.
Wonderful.
And we are waiting for the hardware to deliver for production and QA environment so that we can get it started. And we would like to do our app modernization using that platform.
Fantastic. It's very exciting. So they'll be one of the first to have Azure Stack systems. So congratulations. Thank you so much, Pankaj, for coming up and telling us about your story with Azure Stack. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to get to the final demo with Shri and Thomas, which is application model on premises. And here we have a medical equipment company. So it's a medical equipment company called Fabricam. And they have a systems purchasing application. They need to actually, it's mission critical. They're using an ERP system on the back end. But they want to start modernizing the front end application. So they need the real-time inventory control. So I'll hand it over to Shri.
All right. So Fabricam is currently using this particular application for their purchasing needs. And this application is currently hosted in a virtualized environment running on IIS. It's backed by a local SQL server. And we're having a lot of operational difficulties with this particular application, mainly because it's very difficult to integrate this with our DevOps pipeline. The time it takes for us to build the code, test it, validate it with user acceptance testing, and be able to push it into production is taking an inordinate amount of effort and time. In addition to this, when there is peak load, when we are actually having a lot of purchases coming in, it is very difficult for me to manually scale this application out also. This being a complicated application as it is, scaling this in and out, having somebody on standby to make sure that this application is up is very difficult. So what we did, but this application needs to be, the ERP system cannot go to the cloud yet because of restrictions and architectural gravities that revolve around it. So what we did was, using Azure Stack, we've modernized this purchasing application that talks to the ERP system, and this is running close to the ERP system inside our data center. So we took the application and using app services and functions that is available on Azure Stack, we were able to modernize this application in terms of building it with web apps, Azure Functions, and actually being backed by storage accounts and SQL databases. And all of this is running Azure Stack. Now, let me go ahead and actually purchase an equipment. So let's go ahead. I'm going to purchase some heart rate monitors, some first aid kits, and an elite stethoscope. Thomas, do you want all of these?
I do.
All right, sounds good. So I filled up the value, and I've actually submitted it. Now, what happens at this point in time is this front end talks to the functions application that is running, and this functions application is responsible for translating the information from the front-end application into a format that the ERP system can actually consume and move the order to fulfillment. Now, when there is peak traffic for me for this application, App Services gives me a very user-friendly interface to scale in and scale out that application on demand. Once the blade loads up, I will show you what that experience looks like. There we go. It is as simple as a slider. All I need to do is basically increase the number of instances of this website when the load is high, and it will automatically cater to the incoming traffic. And that's basically it. It makes my life so much more simple, and because I can integrate my DevOps pipeline with App Services, I will be able to constantly push code into this application, and the time it takes for me to deliver value to my customers gets significantly decreased and will optimize my delivery process because of this. Now, for me to scale in and scale these websites out, there needs to be some level of infrastructure support that will enable me to do this, which basically means the App Services that is backing all of this up needs to have an appropriate amount of worker instances. And I, as a developer, don't have access to that. For me, it's all about the application. For me, it's all about this user portal, this application, and being able to deploy this through the DevOps pipeline. But to make sure that the backing infrastructure has the appropriate resources it needs to support my project, I talked to Thomas as my operator, and Thomas will show you how to do this through the back end.
So as an Azure Stack operator, I do not only manage the capacity of the Azure Stack system, I'm also managing the capacity of the web worker roles that are used by the application to really enable that seamless application scaling experience. So I'm back in the Azure Stack operator experience, and we're now drilling deeper into the infrastructure. So for that purpose, we're going to use the region management tile. So we're going to take a look at the overall system capacity. So on a first glimpse, you see the actual usage for physical storage. So you notice the usage and that we have 14 terabyte free storage. But you also see the memory availability is more than 200 gigabyte. So I think it's fair to say that we have enough capacity to enable our developer to scale up his application. So for that, we're going to go back into the operational experience for web apps. And here, we define our roles. And with a similar experience that you have seen on the developer side, we can scale out the instances of our worker pools. So as you see here, I have the ability to select either a shared pool or a small, medium, or large pool. And again, it's my responsibility as the operator to make sure there are enough free instances of workers available in those pools. So again, similar experience, just with a slider, I can go ahead and provision additional instances in this pool. Now, quickly raise hands how many of you use System Center Operations Manager in your current environment? Couple. So Azure Stack was designed for integration with existing systems on-premise. So in my earlier demo, I've seen you integration with Active Directory. Now I'm going to show you how we integrate with Operations Manager. So the Azure Stack Management Pack does not only allow you to manage alerts, it also allows you to manage capacity. So with the data warehouse capabilities of Operations Manager, we store data over time. So by defining the period, we can basically take a look how our system behaved over a specific period. So as you can see, based on the graphs, our memory consumption, the blue line, was pretty steady, and storage was going up and down. So this data allows me to do better forecasting of the Azure Stack systems. Thank you.
Thanks. So that was a really fun demo because, as you noticed, Shri is using PaaS services on Azure Stack. So I think that's really critical to point out. That's app services that are running on Azure Stack, not just IaaS capabilities. And Thomas showed you more of the operator experience and how easy it is to manage the infrastructure. So I'm going to keep going now to hybrid cloud. So one thing that we've been seeing in the industry is there are a lot of people that say they have hybrid cloud offerings, and I don't want to minimize that. There are different ways to do hybrid. There's ways where you can get potentially boxed in. And so I wanted just to spend a few minutes on VMware and AWS and their hybrid cloud solution. And their hybrid cloud solution, in many ways, we feel is more of a hosting solution. And many of you have used hosters in the past. This gives you the capability to have hosting of VMware in AWS. It's really different from what we are doing with Azure Stack. The other thing that we've been talking about throughout this presentation is many of the use cases that we see with Azure Stack and how differentiated they are. That edge and disconnected solution, super powerful, where you're using the same cloud platform in Azure and Azure Stack, so you can do the consistent development. More of what we're seeing when we're hearing from our customers is with the VMware and AWS, it's oftentimes a lift and shift, where you're actually taking its virtualized workloads. And that's why I was pointing out specifically in that last demo, there's PaaS services on Azure Stack. You can really modernize your applications. It is more than just virtualization. We've talked about before is IaaS on a cloud, IaaS on Azure, as well as Azure Stack, includes things such as the VM extensions. So you can have things like Docker containers through the VM extensions. So it is far more robust. So while there's many opportunities for you to have hybrid capabilities, even with Microsoft technologies, you can stretch your databases, you can have identity services. Azure Stack gives you that consistent hybrid cloud platform with Azure. Okay. Azure Stack's promise really is about that consistent application development. And we demonstrated that through the use cases of how you can use the same development tools. A lot of what we demonstrated today was showing some of the portal experience, was showing VSTS, but it doesn't mean just using Microsoft technologies. It's the same development tool chain that you can use with Azure and Azure Stack, whether it be Microsoft technologies or third-party and open source tools. But you have that consistent application development. And I think that's really key as you get into DevOps and you get into modernizing some of the applications and services. It really gives you that benefit. The other thing is Azure services on premises. So we've got Microsoft Azure services, but also third-party services that you can have available in Azure globally, as well as in Azure Stack. And then finally, an integrated delivery experience. So we've partnered, I mentioned very early on in the announcements that we've made, we are providing Azure Stack through integrated systems. So it's an integrated delivery system where you can use the hardware and software that's been tested and validated together jointly with our hardware partners. So really key. Those are the three core promises of Azure Stack. Maybe? So from a PaaS perspective, we believe the PaaS services can really enable productivity for you. We demonstrated the web apps. So in Azure App Services, you have web apps, mobile apps, and API apps available on Azure Stack. Azure Functions. So how many of you went to the Cloud and Enterprise keynote yesterday with Scott Guthrie? Most of the room, maybe not all of the room. That was another use case that we provided was Northwind, the shipping company. So from a shipping company, we did demonstrate the use of functions. Functions is serverless computing. And so Azure Stack does have serverless computing available. So you can do things like in that example, we were parsing data so you could really limit the bandwidth. Service Fabric, so Service Fabric for scalable distributed applications, then container services. And finally, Cloud Foundry for open source. So again, not a Microsoft technology, which is an open source platform. So just a key note here, the Azure App Service as well as Azure Functions available today. The Container Service and Service Fabric will be available later in calendar year 18 is what it's planned. But it's beyond just IaaS, and this is where it really is differentiated from just virtualization. With IaaS available on Azure Stack, you get things like scaling of your virtual machines with VM scale sets. You can get extensions so you can do things like have Docker containers. Networking has the load balancer, the VPN gateway, and then blobs, tables, queues. So really some of the storage services that are available in Azure are available in Azure Stack, and even the security paradigms with Key Vault. Okay? So we will continue to add functionality from Azure and bring it down to Azure Stack because we are an extension of Azure. So we will continue to add things like new VM types, and we'll grow some of the VM types and have more available. And for any of you who have been with us through the journey, through the technical previews, you've seen that we've added VM types over time. We'll add things like managed disk capabilities, additional storage API updates. So you'll continue to see that innovation because we are part of Azure and part of the Azure Cloud cadence. Okay? We do have one Azure ecosystem, and I think this is a really important thing to understand is because our ISVs, and some of you may be ISV here, have invested in Azure, they can accrue that value to Azure Stack. So you have one Azure ecosystem that you can leverage across Azure and Azure Stack. So as you can see here, this is a robust list of our ecosystem partners. So we've got folks like Red Hat, Docker, Cloud Foundry, Pivotal Cloud Foundry. A lot of the applications and services that are certified on Azure will work on Azure Stack. So you have one ecosystem that you can leverage. So with that, a new announcement for us is we had talked about open source Cloud Foundry in the past, and we're pleased to announce that Pivotal Cloud Foundry will be available on Azure Stack as well. So this really gives us a hybrid open technology. So with that, I want to introduce Ellie from Pivotal on stage. So please welcome Ellie. Thank you. Oh, let me just switch this. Sorry, give us 1 second. I can't remember all the questions, so. Is it the right file? Okay, apologies. Please have a seat, sorry. Oh. He can't talk that loud. Thank you.
All right, this is better.
So thank you, Ellie. Really excited to have you on stage with us and to talk about Pivotal Cloud Foundry on Azure Stack.
Super excited to be here.
So can you tell us some of the customer scenarios that you're seeing and use cases on Azure with Pivotal Cloud Foundry?
Awesome. So Pivotal is a company, right? We work with some of the world's largest companies to work with them on how to build software in radically new ways. What we've been seeing in the industry holistically is for the last 15, 20 years, many companies have been seeing software as a cost center. They've been outsourcing. They've been trying to reduce costs. But what they're waking up to today is they're waking up to an industry where a lot of Silicon Valley-based upstarts are trying to disrupt them, right? I'll use an example, for example. A major car manufacturing company in the US over here is looking around and they're seeing new business models such as Uber and Lyft that are doing something radically different and are now having higher valuations than the existing traditional manufacturers of cars. So that car company has worked with Pivotal to build a companion mobile application, giving them a new touch point with the customer, enabling them to introduce new scenarios, such as car sharing, carpooling, busing, and other scenarios like that. So for customers, the benefit here is the ability to innovate and innovate quickly. And the way you do it is by breaking your existing applications that are built in monolithic ways into microservices and using new frameworks such as, building with Java, building with Spring, building with Spring Cloud and Netflix OSS that Pivotal happens to be the custodian of, to build those services on what many of our customers call the cloud for grown-ups, Azure.
I love that phrase, the cloud for grown-ups. So we talk about Azure and Azure Stack being hybrid and open, right? So how does Pivotal Cloud Foundry extend to Azure Stack for hybrid scenarios?
Right, so there's many scenarios that customers are coming to us. The customer overlap between us and Azure Stack is huge. We typically talk to very similar people in very similar organizations. So retail scenarios, for example. Many of our customers are looking to extend their application, the investment that they've made into Azure, to extend it on premises. So be able to use the same operations model that they've used with Azure and be able to have an Azure Stack instance on-premise, enabling them to have redundancy or be able to operate in an environment where there's no Azure data center, for example. Also in financial services, many scenarios where having on-premise is exactly the same operating model is incredibly important. Many of our customers have tried other things, but the difference with Azure Stack is that it's managed. It is provided by the same company that operates on a global scale.
That's very exciting, Ellie. And you're right, the industries that you're seeing are some of the same industries that we're seeing, everything from retail to financial services. And I think it's very exciting to extend some of those open source technologies like Pivotal Cloud Foundry to Azure and Azure Stack. I'm very excited that we're working together. You want to talk about how we are working together with Pivotal Cloud Foundry. I know my team's very excited to work with your team.
Perfect. So we've been working together for the last 6 months or so, and we've been working together both on Pivotal's distribution of Cloud Foundry, which happens to be probably the predominant distribution of Cloud Foundry, but I'm a little biased, and the open source, right? And what's interesting over here is that because the control surface for Azure Stack is very similar to Azure, the reality is the amount of code changes we had to do is quite minimal, right? And what that means for you as a customer, if you're adopting Azure Stack, is that the same investments you've made with Azure extend over to Azure Stack. And we're super excited about this collaboration.
No, and I really appreciate the collaboration. And that's one of our core value propositions, is being able to have minimal to no changes when you're developing between Azure and Azure Stack. So thank you for the partnership. And I think, so I would love to actually show people how it's done. So thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.
Thanks. You take that. Thank you. Okay, so let me switch over quickly. So I'm not inviting Shri and Thomas up, so this is not an operator developer story from them. But I wanted to give you a quick demo of Pivotal Cloud Foundry on Azure Stack. So as you can see, here's Pivotal Cloud Foundry's App Manager, and you have option to deploy to Azure, and then you've got the Pivotal Elastic Runtime. So if I go into the Pivotal Elastic Runtime, you can see all the resources that are in the Pivotal Runtime. And I should have actually, let me show you too. This is running, this is live. That's in Redmond. And these are all the resources for the Pivotal Elastic Runtime. Now I'm going to switch over now to an Azure Stack implementation. Again, it's that same portal that you've seen throughout the day that's consistent with Azure. But here you can see I have Pivotal Cloud Foundry deployed. These are all the resources that are available for Pivotal Cloud Foundry running on Azure Stack. That's pretty exciting. Okay, and that's what I think. So that's a very quick demo on Pivotal Cloud Foundry. I don't want to take a lot of time. We have other sessions where we can go in more depth into that. So let me go through. So we only have a few minutes left. I want to go through finally. So we can realize managed services, Azure services everywhere with managed service provider solutions. So one of the things I did want to talk about is Azure Stack. Throughout the demonstrations, we showed Thomas being the operator of Azure Stack. You can manage and operate an Azure Stack environment. However, we recognize that many customers want to use service providers to manage and operate. And we've been working with service providers to actually have Azure Stack offerings available. You can see those service providers are across the globe. So if you wanted to use Azure Stack, you can work with many of the service providers and have them manage and operate an Azure Stack offering for you. In addition, this really extends the geographic reach for Azure services. Because again, instead of just the 42 regions of Azure, it can extend to other regions where there might be data sovereignty requirements. You also have domain and industry experience and regulatory experience because they are in region. So many of the service providers that we've partnered with have that domain and industry experience. They also can manage and operate Azure Stack on your behalf. You can still maintain the application development and then manage that, but they can manage and operate that on your behalf. So a big list of service providers that are available. We also have managed services providers who are providing fully managed offerings. So one that I'd like to talk about in particular is Avanade. And Avanade has a solution, a fully managed solution for Azure Stack that's ready to order now. So it's a complete solution that you can have from Avanade to manage a service provider offering for you. So it includes everything from the hardware, the software, the services. So if you want somebody to manage the entire suite for you, you have an offering that's ready to order today with one contract through Avanade. And this is very exciting for many regions where you may not be able to use Azure. You can use a service provider and an SI such as Avanade. Okay. In addition, with the SIs, you can really leverage in-depth Azure skill sets. So the SIs that are available have skill sets in Azure as well as Azure Stack. They're fully trained. They understand the application modernization, the use cases. We have people who are ready to help you with your application modernization efforts. And they're trained on Azure, they're trained on Azure Stack, they understand industry technologies. So many SIs are there to help you with your journey to Azure and app modernization. And so this is a sampling of the SIs that are available. Folks like DXC, Avanade that I mentioned that has a fully managed offering that's available to order. But many of them are available today. So partners, if you're a partner here today, you can extend your Azure investments to Azure Stack environments. We have an Azure Stack certification, so Azure Stack certified for ISVs. Are there any ISVs in the room today? Great, there's some ISVs. So you can become Microsoft Azure certified. So we're extending that to Azure Stack environments for ISVs, managed service providers, as well as system integrators. Okay. Now, Azure Stack, as I mentioned, is provided via an integrated delivery experience. So that includes everything from the integrated systems. We started the shipping systems are Dell, EMC, HPE, and Lenovo. We also talked about Cisco having availability, Huawei, and just announced is Wortman with their Terra system. Okay? We've really invested in the deployment technology with Azure Stack. So it's fast to deploy. You can get it quickly up and running. When you purchase a system from an integrated systems provider, they will install and deploy it for you. But you can deliver hundreds of VMs with that. One key differentiator for a product that's on premises, this is a cloud product, is you have a pay-as-you-use billing model. So it can actually accrue and be an extension to your Azure bill. So you can pay based on consumption. So using OpEx versus CapEx. And then we have integrated support. So there's a consistent experience from a support experience perspective. With the integrated systems, you can either choose to call the hardware provider or you can call Microsoft. You have a choice and you'll get a consistent experience wherever you decide to call from a support perspective. We'll manage all the ticket exchange on the back end for you. We'll be available in 46 geographies initially, and we're really looking to work with our customers and understand the requirements to extend beyond. So we'll be continuing listening to where there are additional requirements and needs for our customers. So the Cisco systems, ready to order, and the Huawei systems will be available in Q1 calendar year 18. So that's an important note to make. So the one announcement that we made, and I mentioned at the beginning, is we have a new learning path to advance your career. So if you are operators here today, we have a new Azure Stack operator training course. So that will be, the actual exam will be available in Q1, but we already have some product documentation. There is a learning path that's online, so you can look at some of the training videos for Azure Stack. But this is how you can advance your career. You can become Azure Stack operator certified. So you can start your journey today and become an Azure Stack operator. Okay. Finally, a couple of ways that you can purchase Azure Stack. As I mentioned, one is an integrated system. If you are an enterprise here today and you wanted to purchase an Azure Stack system, you can acquire that through a hardware provider. So again, HP, Dell, Lenovo, they have systems that you can order today. They will actually provide you a contract for the hardware, and you will have a contract to sign for the Azure Stack software. Okay? So 2 contracts to sign. Usually that's for customers that want to host the environment themselves. They want to have Azure Stack operators available there. So you would purchase, say, from either Dell, HP, or Lenovo. You'd also sign a contract for Microsoft. Dell, HP, Lenovo would come out. They would do the installation and deployment for you. And then you would get going with your Azure Stack. You would need an operator as well as managing your services then. There's some customers that want a fully managed service. So the other option for purchasing is that model that we talked about with Avanade. So the managed service provider does all of the management and operations for you. You would have one contract, so it's a single point of contact that you would have. So you can call them for your support. You can call them and they would manage the entire environment for you. So it's a complete solution from Avanade, and there's also other managed service providers that can provide you that. Again, but it's one integrated support experience that you have. We manage all that ticket exchange on the back end to ensure that you have the best experience. So from a roadmap, we're over time, so I'm going to go very quickly. We have available today, we still have 2 methods for Azure Stack. One is a single node system, the Azure Stack Development Kit, that you can use on a one server that is not specifically from HP, Dell, and Lenovo. You can have that available based on our requirements that we have available, or you can order an integrated system. That's for production deployments. That ASDK is meant for development purposes only. We announced that we are shipping systems. Those can go off to 46 countries, and you can come to us and get us the specific list if you have a question on geography. So that was announced. The rest of the calendar year, we're going to continue driving supply chain volume. We're going to optimize for availability, reliability. And then as we get into calendar year 18, some of the features, functionalities that we are looking at and we're planning for is adding additional scale. We will add multi-region support and look for additional business continuity enhancements. Add additional VM types. So as mentioned, we've been adding VM types at each technical preview. We'll continue to add VM types just like Azure has. And then we've got the Azure Service Fabric, Container Service, and Managed Disks. So with that, since we are over, I'm just going to thank you for your time today. I hope this has been you've enjoyed this session. We're really excited that we're shipping Azure Stack Systems and the value and benefit that it can provide you with a consistent hybrid platform. Thank you.